It is 5:36 in the morning right now. This is like my prime wisdom hour, and I'm about to drop some absolute knowledge on you guys. A couple weeks ago, I was out with my friend at this place called Legacy West. Now, if you don't know what Legacy West is, basically it's like the DFW's version of Rodeo Drive. It's a place that you can go to see a bunch of nice cars. You'll see Lamborghinis, Ferraris, McLarens, any car you could think of, you'll see it there. It also has a lot of upscale restaurants and upscale shopping. They just put a bunch of designer stores there, none of which I plan on going to anytime in the near future, but that's besides the point. Okay, it's a nice area, which is why me and my friend frequent that area every time we hang out, because our talks are typically very motivational, and we talk about YouTube and just the strategies behind what we're doing. And it's nice to be in that type of setting when we talk about these things. It's motivational. It feeds into our conversation even more. The last time we went was a little bit different. And that's because I, by that point, had started to see through the material side of things. Now, what do I mean by that? Let me just put out this disclaimer first of all. This is one of those videos that may make you feel uncomfortable. It may strike a nerve, especially with your ego. If you feel any type of resistance or irritation from my words, if you feel like maybe I'm undermining your goals and telling you that the things that you are striving for are worthless, then this video is for you. You need this video more than anyone else. And the reason why I know that is because I was in your shoes. This is a lesson that it took me a very long time to come to terms with. The essence of this lesson is the things that we think matter, the things that we dedicate our lives to, the things that we put forth so much effort to strive for, things that we stress about, things that we grieve about. A lot of these things don't really matter. A lot of these things really don't matter at all. I'm going to give you guys an example. My dream car is a Tesla Model 3 Performance, the midnight silver metallic colorway. You can go do it on the Tesla website. It comes out to about $57,000, the way that I configure it. It's a beautiful car, everything that I want in a car. One thing that I would always visualize was myself driving down, it's the street called Windrose Avenue. That's like the middle of Legacy West, that goes straight down the middle of Legacy West. I'd always envision myself when I get that car driving down that one street. Imagine putting in years of work, countless early mornings, late nights, sacrifices being made, all so that you can get a car to drive down one street. Think about that. Think about how meaningless that sounds, but in my head, I assigned so much value to that experience, to the idea of that experience, much less the experience itself. And a few times I've actually driven Teslas because they have a Tesla place there. I've test driven Teslas and drove them down that street. And guess what I felt? I felt disappointment. I didn't get that feeling that I thought I would feel because I realized that it doesn't matter. None of that matters. The car that you drive doesn't matter. The clothes that you wear don't matter. None of that stuff really truly matters. And a lot of times we use those things as motivation. But what's the true motivation behind those things? The true motivation is to impress other people. Let's just be real about that. A lot of times when we want nice things, we just want to impress other people. I wanted that car so that I could drive down that street so that other people would see me driving it and know that I'm successful. But if I'm having to do that to validate my own success, then am I really successful? Because other people, they might see me as successful, but for all they know, I could have rented that car. They have no way of knowing that that's mine. I could be borrowing it from someone. I could have stolen that car. But I know whether the car is mine or not. The thing is, I shouldn't need other people's validation to tell me that that car is mine and that I've worked that hard to be where I am at that point in my life. I shouldn't need other people's validation, but I still seek it subconsciously. And I realized that a lot of times this presents itself in my attachment to my desires. There's a lot of things that I want. The car is just one of many examples, but there's a lot of times that I visualize myself with the things that I want in the context of receiving validation from other people. And it sounds very shallow, but if you look within, I bet that most of you have these same thought patterns going on in your heads as well. And it's messed up. It is messed up because we shouldn't be living our lives solely for the sake of other people's validation. But the first step towards undoing those thought cycles is the awareness. Now, one thing that me and my friend talked about the last time we went to Legacy West was in your visions, when you visualize the things that you want, are you visualizing them from your perspective or from other people's perspective? This right here, this is going to be groundbreaking for at least one person watching this. Somebody's going to have a life-changing epiphany off of that. If that didn't shake you up, let me say it again. Are you visualizing things from your perspective or from other people's perspectives? For example, when I visualized myself driving that car down that street, down Windrose Avenue, I always envisioned it in third person. Subconsciously, I didn't even realize that I was doing that, but I would always visualize it in third person. I would pay more attention to how other people would react in my vision than to how I myself felt driving the car in my vision. And maybe had I taken the time to truly pay attention to how I felt in my visions, I would have noticed that I didn't feel any different because I'm still the same person no matter what car I'm driving. These cars don't mean anything. These clothes don't mean anything. The material things mean absolutely nothing. Sure, they bring you a temporary sense of satisfaction, pleasure, and also they act as benchmarks for your growth. And I'd be lying to you guys if I said I don't still plan on getting a Tesla in the next couple of years. That's definitely still in the works. I'm going to do it, and I'm still going to drive it down Windrose Avenue. But at the same time, I realize how meaningless that actually is. And I have to be aware that I'm only doing that for my ego. I'm not doing that for any type of fulfillment. And I think it's very important to create that boundary, to identify the desires that are rooted in ego and the desires that are rooted in fulfillment of the soul. What do you truly want out of life? See, what I realized is that in my soul, a lot of these things, a lot of the things that I really truly want, they're free. They're free, and I've always had access to them. I like going out into nature, watching the sunset. I like writing poetry. I like doing things like that. Simple things. Things that don't cost any money. And I realize also that when you become accustomed to the high life, to a certain level of wealth and prosperity and abundance, that becomes your new norm. And when that becomes your new norm, you start to seek pleasure in other places, or you realize that pleasure will never fill that void and you need to find sources of fulfillment. And what are you going to turn to? You're going to turn to the things that were always there to begin with, all of the experiences that were always there. Another example is relationships. A lot of you guys think that relationships are going to bring you that sense of fulfillment. And in a sense, they do. Relationships can be very fulfilling if they're with the right person, in the right timing, the right circumstances. But a relationship can never compensate for a lack of self-love. It can't. It simply cannot do that. If you don't love yourself, nobody out there can make you love yourself. Because you have to love yourself for you. You're the only person that can give yourself unconditional love because you're the only person that can know all parts of yourself. Nobody knows every thought that's going on in your mind, every feeling that you feel, every belief that you have, every action that you take. Nobody knows everything about you except for you. So you're the only person that can give yourself that love. And when you start to give yourself that love, what you'll find is that a lot of these desires that you have, the desires that are rooted in ego, start to fade away. The things that you thought you wanted, you don't actually want. And that can be very difficult to come to terms with, to realize that a lot of these material desires, these material ambitions, don't actually mean anything because you know that they're not going to bring you fulfillment. They're not going to do anything other than provide you temporary pleasure. And like I said, that doesn't mean that you don't want those things or you don't strive for those things anymore. But you realize that you're okay without them and you can live a very happy and fulfilling life without those things. And ironically, that's the essence of manifestation. That's how you bring things to yourself. If you really pay attention, a lot of times when you manifest things, it's done when you let go. When you think about something and then you completely forget about it because it doesn't hold that much significance in your life. That's when things start to flow your way. And also, when you learn to love yourself, you learn to value the way that you feel over the way that other people perceive you. And once you do that, your visions and your life in general happen in first person. You see things from your perspective. And that's the major paradigm shift, because when you start to see things from your perspective, you can really truly embody that version of you that is there. You can't feel something that version of you is feeling if you're not being them, if you're not seeing life through their perspective. You're seeing life through other people's perspectives. A lot of times we visualize ourselves seeking validation from other people. Think about that. How many times have you visualized yourself maybe with your perfect body, walking past a group of girls, and then all of a sudden they're all asking for your number, or just things like that? How often do you have visions like that, where the end result is other people's validation? And see, ironically, when you visualize yourself seeking other people's validation, what you really want at the end of everything is your own validation. You want other people's validation to give you permission to love yourself and to give yourself that validation. But it's only once you give yourself that validation that you receive the validation from other people. Life is very twisted in a lot of ways, and see, our ego, it doesn't see that, because our ego only operates under what it knows, what it sees, with the information that it's given. The ego doesn't leave any room for manifestation, for true manifestation and the flow of life. Just living life in the moment and letting things come to you. Now, like I said, that doesn't mean that you don't put in work or you don't strive for your goals or anything like that. But it means that you do it from a place of abundance, not a place of lack. It means that you love yourself enough to say, I'm going to pursue what I want because I know I deserve it, as opposed to, I'm going to pursue this thing, I'm going to pursue what I think I want as an excuse to seek validation from other people. It's all a facade. It's all a facade. The ego is a facade, and it's very effective in convincing you that your desires are genuine. But when you start to detach from everything, when you start to let go of all the things that don't serve you, you'll realize very quickly that it's all for nothing.